The Forest Conservation Act 1980 is an important environmental law in India. Before this act, large areas of forests were being cut down for industries, roads, mining, agriculture, and other developmental activities. This caused deforestation, loss of wildlife, soil erosion, and climate-related problems. Therefore, the Act was enacted to conserve forests and ensure that forest land is not used for non-forest purposes without the approval of the central government. Main provisions and features of the Forest Conservation Act 1980. 1. Conservation of forests. The main objective of the Act is to protect forests and prevent unnecessary destruction of forest land. It aims to maintain ecological balance and conserve biodiversity. 2. Prior approval of the central government. The most important feature of the Act is that no state government or authority can use forest land for non-forest purposes without obtaining the prior approval of the central government. 3. Restriction on dereservation of forests. A state government cannot declare a reserved forest as non-reserved without the prior approval of the central government. This prevents the unnecessary reduction of protected forest areas. 4. Restriction on non-forest use. Forest land cannot be used for industries, mining, construction, agriculture, roads, or any other non-forest activity without central government approval. 5. Restriction on assignment of forest land. The state government cannot assign or lease forest land to private persons, companies, corporations, or organizations without prior approval of the central government. 6. Compensatory afforestation. When forest land is permitted for development projects, the project authority is generally required to plant trees on other suitable land to compensate for the loss of forests. This is known as compensatory afforestation. 7. Advisory Committee. The central government may constitute an advisory committee to examine proposals relating to the use of forest land and to advise whether approval should be granted. 8. Penalty for violation. Any violation of the provisions of the Act may result in legal action against the persons or authorities responsible. Checks imposed on the powers of the state government. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 places important checks on the powers of the state government to prevent misuse of forest land. These checks include: the state government cannot use forest land for non-forest purposes without prior approval of the central government. It cannot dereserve reserved forests without central government approval. It cannot lease or transfer forest land to private individuals, companies, or other organizations without approval. It must submit detailed proposals explaining why forest land is required and what environmental impact the project may have. The central government examines each proposal carefully with the help of experts before granting permission. The state government must ensure compensatory afforestation and comply with all conditions imposed by the central government. If the state government violates these provisions, the approval may be cancelled and legal action can be taken. These checks ensure that forests are used only when absolutely necessary and that environmental protection remains a priority. Case Study: T.N. Godavarman Thirumulpad v. Union of India. One of the most important forest conservation cases is T.N. Godavarman Thirumulpad v. Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court noticed that forests across India were being cut indiscriminately. The court held that the term forest should be understood broadly and directed that the provisions of the Forest Conservation Act 1980 must be strictly followed. It also ruled that no forest land should be diverted for non-forest purposes without the approval of the central government. The court monitored forest conservation through continuing directions and strengthened the implementation of the Act throughout the country. Simple lesson from the case: forests belong to the nation and are valuable natural resources. They cannot be destroyed for development without following the law. Development is important, but it must be balanced with environmental protection. Conclusion: The Forest Conservation Act 1980 is a landmark law for protecting India's forests. It limits the powers of the state government by making prior approval of the central government compulsory for the use of forest land for non-forest purposes. The Act promotes sustainable development by ensuring that forests are conserved while allowing only essential developmental activities. It reminds us that forests are essential for clean air, water, biodiversity, and the well-being of present and future generations.